Hi, I'm Julie, and this is entry number 5 of my video diary, a year in the life of an elementary Spanish teacher. And I had some really great reflection and reminder moments this week, most specifically with my second graders, who I had planned a lesson for that involved one of our keywords, bay, which is a word that they have been exposed to and we've worked with in kindergarten and first grade. But now it's a key word, a more important word as it were. I identify key vocabulary for each theme in each year. And I was introducing it in context with our mini book, Pepita y la Mariposa. And the lesson I had planned to do, or that I did do actually, was so I had a little puppet of Pepita, and each kid got to take a turn to say what Pepita sees. And part of the idea behind this was that I could also, I wanted to spiral old curriculum, old content, old vocabulary back and use it again so that we could practice it. So I had a variety of different pictures of vocabulary that they could use to say what Pepita sees. Well, it didn't go the way I had hoped it would go. I had about maybe 4 or 5 turns before the class started to squirrel out, and they were really struggling to stay focused. And they wanted turns, other students wanted turns, but they just couldn't handle waiting for their turn. They couldn't handle staying focused. Now, I am a huge proponent of whole class activities because I do think that kids have a hard time sustaining attention. But by the same token, I also think it's really important for students to learn how to listen to one another and to practice audience behavior, appropriate audience behavior. I think we have to give them opportunities to practice that. And so I do build those types of activities in. And part of the reason why I had thought that this activity would work better than it did was that these particular second graders last year had really, they had developed the ability to sustain for a period of time, to take turns, maybe not the whole class. And I don't typically do taking turns for the whole class. At the most, I'll usually do half the class, and then we'll do the other half of the class another lesson. But so I had, kind of made the assumption that they could continue to do that this year. So the reflection piece and the reminder piece, as I thought about the lesson afterwards, Monday afternoon, realizing and remembering, really, this was a good reminder moment for me that, first of all, our kids change from year to year, and we know that. We watch them, especially when you have them for 5 years. You really get to watch them change and grow and evolve. And lots of different types of behaviors emerge, both positive and maybe not so positive. But it's the child individually changes and grows and evolves, but of course the class dynamic changes every year too. So the mix that they were in as first graders last year maybe work differently than the mix that they're in this year in second grade. And so as they're building community and coming together in September and into October, I'm having to learn, and this was something that I have to constantly remind myself of, is that I have to learn what the new dynamic is for this group of kids in this particular year, because that's the other piece of it. Is it's both in terms of kind of relearning or getting to know my kiddos again in this new context, in this new setting, as a different class, but also remembering that what I do for second grade, this is what I do in second grade, is dependent, at least the activities, maybe not the curriculum. The skills that I'm looking for, those are going to remain the same. But the activities that I do with those kids in order to get to those goals, those curriculum goals, may change dependent on the kids. So some classes may need more movement. Some classes may need more whole group. Some classes maybe are really great at sustaining focus. Maybe some kids need a range of different strategies, and therefore thinking about and planning the activities accordingly based on who they are this year in this class, right? So after reflecting and after, kind of thinking about this, I changed the activity for the next lesson. So I was going to have another second grade come in, and I figured, okay, there's a good chance that I want to change this lesson for them as well. So I changed it to a whole group activity, but I still wanted to keep the components of practicing the word bay and the idea of spiraling the vocabulary. So bringing back that old content. I wanted to keep that because that's really important to keep old vocabulary alive. You've got to keep bringing it back, right? So as I said, I changed it to a whole group, and I put the 4 vocabulary words around the room to do a 4 corners activity. And I did still choose one student. They were Pepita, and they got to say what Pepita sees. Okay, so Pepita ve una banana, Pepita ve un gato, Pepita ve whatever it was that I had around the room. And then the entire class had to listen and then move to where that vocabulary word was, in whichever corner, whichever space around my room. You can imagine perhaps that this was far more successful. First of all, it had a listening component in it where they had to listen in order to act, so that was great. We still spiraled the vocabulary. I continually switched out the pictures so that we had new vocabulary being used. We did get through about half the class doing the activity, taking a turn. My kids know that if they don't get a turn in one class, they'll get a turn in another, so they were okay with not having a turn. And it just served as and it also included movement, which is always a great thing. I do try to have movement in almost every class of some kind. So the reflection for me and the reminder for me was incredibly helpful as I planned for the rest of the week and made adjustments based on what I was seeing in that first class and my reflection and thinking about that. So that was this week. This week's one of my reflections, at least, one of my thoughts. I would love to hear how you're relearning and getting to know your students again, or what kind of activities or adjustments you've made this week. At any rate, see you next time. Bye.